We navigate our lives relying on a rigid set of systems. We trust that gravity pulls downward, that human beings possess a basic instinct to survive, and that history is a fixed ledger of cause and effect. These frameworks make the world feel safe and predictable, but occasionally the ledger breaks. A historical glitch occurs, documented, verified events, where the established laws of physics and human logic bleed into chaos. We can understand these anomalies by categorizing them into the three foundational human systems they dismantle: the natural world, human psychology, and our perception of truth. Examining these specific failures proves that the most destabilizing gaps in our knowledge are buried right here in our own history. Deep in the remote Siberian forest in 1949, a geologist named Vadim Kolpakov discovered the Potomsky crater, a massive circular stone structure that defies its own existence. The crater sits 40 meters high and 160 meters wide. Compasses spin wildly, and radiation levels spike far beyond normal baseline when measured at the site. Geologically, a structure like this requires an explosive volcanic eruption to form, yet the surrounding region has zero history of volcanic activity. This cross-section geological chart illustrates what Soviet scientists found when they scanned the site with ground-penetrating radar. The scan revealed a massive, dense, unidentifiable metal object buried deep underground. Decades later, its origin remains entirely unknown. Sometimes the breach of natural law is biological. In March of 1876, the sky above Olympia Springs, Kentucky was perfectly clear. Suddenly, chunks of raw meat began raining down across the yards, trees, and rooftops for 2 straight minutes. Local logic desperately tried to explain it as a flock of vultures simultaneously vomiting their meal. However, laboratory analysis of the material told a different story. The meat was identified as lung tissue belonging to either a horse or a human being. When an unidentified metal mass sits below a geologically impossible crater, or lung tissue falls from a cloudless sky, the scientific method is rendered useless. Physical evidence directly contradicts the laws required to explain it. The second threshold involves the collapse of human logic. In February 1978, 5 young men known as the Yuba County Five vanished on their way home from a basketball game. Their car was eventually found parked in the freezing expanse of the Sierra Nevada mountains. The vehicle was in perfect working condition, with plenty of gas. Instead of driving down the mountain, all 5 men abandoned it, walking 32 kilometers uphill into a deadly blizzard. Searchers found their remains inside a Forestry Service cabin months later. The men had access to heavy clothing, matches, and an entire cache of emergency food. For reasons we will never know, they refused to use any of it, choosing instead to slowly freeze and starve. A different fracture in human behavior stalked the streets of Florence, Italy, between 1968 and 1985. A serial killer targeted couples parked in secluded areas at night. The killer operated with mechanical perfection, utilizing the same firearm and the same method for every attack. Despite a massive, panicked police presence sweeping the region for nearly 2 decades, the killer vanished completely, leaving zero trace. The deepest terror in these events is the realization that human survival instincts and our ability to catch a perfectly patterned predator can completely collapse without warning. Our final threshold involves events that suggest our perception of reality can be completely erased. In 1891, Mrs. Abercrombie checked into room 342 of a luxury Paris hotel with her daughter. When the mother fell ill, the daughter briefly stepped out to buy medicine. She returned 30 minutes later to find room 342 had vanished. The hotel staff, the local police, and the guest registry all denied her mother had ever existed. In less than an hour, every record and physical trace of her presence had been scrubbed from the building. A modern institutional rewrite occurred in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. Local farmer Mac Brazel discovered strange debris, and the military's official press release declared the recovery of a flying saucer. Exactly 24 hours later, the military retracted the statement entirely, claiming the debris was nothing more than a crashed weather balloon. 31 years after the event, Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer who handled the original debris, broke his silence. He stated that the weather balloon story was a forced cover-up, and that the metal he held that day was indestructible, unable to be bent or cut by any earthly tool. We move from institutional secrets to a reality-bending coincidence involving the astronomer Galileo. In 1610, he observed the distinct rings of Saturn. To protect his discovery, he sent an anagram of jumbled Latin letters to his peers. Johannes Kepler attempted to decode the message, but his flawed arrangement spelled out a claim that Mars possessed exactly 2 moons. Everyone wrote Kepler's translation off as a mathematical error. Yet 200 years later, astronomers discovered Phobos and Deimos. Mars actually does have exactly 2 moons. When physical rooms vanish, governments hide evidence, or reality matches a mathematical error, our collective grip on truth begins to dissolve. Whether we look at biological anomalies falling from the sky or an impossible astronomical prediction, these events share a single trait. They offer a total absence of closure. We build human systems and institutions to enforce order on the world. But these 7 glitches prove that our map of reality remains deeply incomplete. History remains an unpredictable live wire, a record where the impossible continues to hide.